This is WWP Weekly Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome to the Weekly Wrestling Podcast. I'm your co-host, Matthew Grant, and we have a very special interview lined up for you right now. And with a special interview, I have a special co-host from the Uncle Mike and Tom Show. Joining me right now is Tom Richards. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Matt?
You there, buddy?
Yeah, you hear me?
I hear you fine, man. How's it going?
Good, man. I'm excited to talk to Jimmy Jacobs, man. It's someone I've been looking forward to talking to for a while.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as well. And without further ado, let's bring him in here. Jimmy Jacobs, what's going on, man?
Hello, gentlemen.
How's it going?
It's always going well in this world here.
Definitely so, man. You've been up to so much throughout your career. I don't even know where to begin. I'm going to let actually Tom take over to start off the beginning here, and then I'll pop in every now and then. So, Tom, take it over, buddy.
Jimmy, what's going on, brother?
Not a whole lot. Just sitting here on I think it's a Wednesday afternoon. This is we have 2 weeks off from the House of Truth Wrestling School. It's hotwrestlingschool.com. There's 2 weeks in between classes, and classes start Monday. And I've got a show tomorrow right outside Detroit, and then we've got Ring of Honor in Columbus Friday, Ring of Honor in Toledo Saturday. I have a show in Warren, Michigan for XICW Sunday, and then class starts again Monday, so it's my last day off. So I'm spending my last evening off with you fine gentlemen.
Wow, what an honor, man. Day off and he's hanging out with us, man. You're one of them guys where you're like an old school wrestler where you'll show up anywhere on any night and wrestle. I swear to God, it doesn't matter if it's Salem, Oregon, or Providence, Rhode Island, or anywhere in between. There's Jimmy Jacobs showing up on an indie show in your town.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I wrestle anywhere, any place, anytime. Not for any amount of money. That's when I started off. It was that was the credo. Anywhere, any place, anytime, for any amount of money. I very early on was impressed upon me that you don't get better, you don't succeed by wrestling once a month. So I've always been of that train of thought, and I'm busier now than I've ever been.
And it's good, man. 15 years in, you've been around the indie world literally forever, and you just turned 30 this year. That's like crazy, man.
Yeah, half my life. I started at 15 years old, and over half my life now has been dedicated to professional wrestling. It's been a wild journey.
I want to go back to the beginning for a minute, because it's something I wanted to ask you a long time. Like, I've been watching you since you started out in IWA Mid-South for Ian Rotten. And in the early days, you and Alex Shelley were kind of like tied together. It seemed like showing up everywhere, working each other for like a long time there. And I always wanted to ask you if there's like any young guys listening. Is that something you recommend, like the young guys breaking in to hook up with someone they gel well with and go around working each other?
Absolutely. It was such an important tool in my career, and I'd seen it with other guys. Before us, it was sort of, Punk and Cabana, and then me and Shelley, and then, Matt Sydal and Delirious, Chuck Taylor and Ricochet. It was important to have a traveling partner, somebody that had the same drive as you, somebody that would drive with you literally to these shows, and to make a name for yourselves together always seemed like a good fit anywhere. And then people would want to see the Jacob Shelley match. Then we'd bring that to Pittsburgh, then bring it to Philadelphia, then New York, and LA, and all that stuff. So yeah, absolutely, I would recommend it. And you know what? This business is it's not supposed to be done alone. Half the fun of it is doing it with your friends. Exactly.
And like all them combinations you just mentioned, that's like something you really don't see a lot of anymore.
It's a little disheartening to me sometimes. I train, at the House of Truth at hotwrestlingschool.com, and I want to see the drive out of these kids coming out of the school, and sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. And that's just the nature of it. As the class goes, generally about half the kids that start, half of them will end up quitting during the training course, and then after that, half the kids that do finish, we don't even see again, which is always sort of mind-boggling to me. So sometimes it's harder to find guys with true drive and heart and determination than you would think, being a business that's mainly driven on passion, because you have to be a passionate person inherently to be a professional wrestler. But I do see some guys that are sort of running that same model as we did all those years ago. That the tag team of Josh Alexander and Ethan Page. They did that. They were driving anywhere, just any place they could, and just trying to tear the house down every night, and starting to pay off for them. Michael Elgin was the same way. I always have a great amount of respect for those younger guys, and I never begrudge them when I see them going out there and, if they're on first, go out there and try to tear the house down. Because I remember what that was like, trying to steal the show, even if it wasn't your place, quote unquote, to steal the show.
Right.
So I always appreciate guys with that sort of drive.
Exactly. And again, speaking of the early days, one of the another thing I wanted to ask you about is like when we were talking about you and Alex Shelley always wrestling everywhere. I don't think you'll disagree that Alex was more of like the technical wrestler, the two of you, but you had the whole berserker gimmick going on, and it seemed like more times or not that would help you get over more first time in. And
oh, absolutely. It was I didn't know what I had back then. People love monosyllabic chants with a hand gesture attached to them, i.e., yes, 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 huss, huss, huss. It's just something easy that the people can catch on to. My first night in IWA Mid-South, not IWA Mid-South, I'm sorry, my first night in Ring of Honor, by the time I was in the ring, half the people in the Murphy Rec Center in Philadelphia were chanting huss. One of the first things that's said about me on commentary, my first Ring of Honor match, Gabe's on commentary goes, Jimmy Jacobs is in the ring, and wow, the huss is over. So it was something that people could attach themselves to, and enjoy and be a part of. People want that fan interaction. They want to interact. So yeah, certainly Alex was the more technically sound of the two. I could hold my own, and he drove me further in that area when we were working together in the ring. But that was never my forte. So certainly his technical prowess at that young age, he had really just started. He's maybe a year in at that point, maybe 2 years. It certainly helped elevate my game, and so it was a combination of the two, of what we did in the ring and the characters that we were, that really helped us break out. 2003 was a huge year for us in that regard.
So what I'm curious is, you had this berserker thing and it was working for you, and what you've been great at your whole career is like changing what you do and like kind of recreating yourself. What made you decide to stop doing the whole berserker gimmick?
I felt it had run its course. If that was over enough, I'd have done that forever. Trust me. There was no part of it was like, now I want to be taken, more seriously as a wrestler or something. That wasn't it at all, by any means. I felt it had run its course, where I was, first at IWA Mid-South, and then at Ring of Honor, I felt it run its course. And, Gabe really, who's booking at the time, Gabe Sapolsky, wasn't the biggest fan of it, or me. The gimmick, while it was cute, and it was over. It was really over. It didn't have a whole lot of legs to go on, it seemed, after that. It was just, all right, we get it. He's a mini Bruiser Brody funny thing. Haha. So it had to evolve. It had to change.
And speaking of Gabe, that brings me to another question. Like I said, you change yourself over and over again. When you had your run in Dragon Gate USA, it seemed like there you were doing more of the straight wrestler type of thing instead of more of your character-driven stuff. How did you like your run doing more of just a straight wrestler type of thing?
Oh, well, it was, it certainly wasn't all that. Me and John Moxley, now Dean Ambrose, had a feud where, we bled. We had an I Quit match on the first Dragon Gate USA pay-per-view, where there was a lot of blood involved. But then part of the character, you talk about change. It's not just change in and of itself. It's logical character development and evolution. It's logical character development. What we did at Dragon Gate USA with me at the time, we correlated this idea of me sort of cleaning up my personal life with, cleaning up my style in the ring. That Dragon Gate USA was a rebirth for me, and to get away from all the bleeding and the fighting and the hardcore type stuff that I had sort of fallen into a little more than I would have liked at different points. So my character was now going back to his quote unquote roots in wrestling, and it was part of the story of the character. It wasn't about it wasn't about an in-ring style. The in-ring style was a backdrop and a tool and a symptom of the story we were telling.
Right. Yeah, I definitely didn't mean that in any type of negative way, because I think that's been one of your strengths, because a lot of guys, they don't change anything up, and it feels like they're just running on a treadmill doing the same bit for ever and ever and ever, and here you are 15 years in, still relevant as ever.
Thank you. And like I said, to me, a lot, and I didn't take that as a negative thing, but I just wanted to, impress that it's about not change for the sake of change,
right?
But about character development. Any sort of TV show you watch, you see characters develop, and generally, a lot of times, the main characters, they don't change their inherent nature. There's something that threads them together. And even with the Jimmy Jacobs character, there is a common thread throughout all of it. He's a little bit smaller, he's a little bit different, he's a little bit odd, he's calculated, but he's emotional at times, and he keeps trying to find these things to sort of fill this gap. This hole inside of him as a human being, and you see that throughout. If you look at any part of the Jimmy Jacobs story, in Ring of Honor, and that's also congruent with the Dragon Gate USA, that really is the same universe for the Jimmy Jacobs character. You see a common thread in there. As much as he evolves and he grows as a person, there's certain inherent things about him that can never be changed, because that's who he is as a person.
Exactly. And getting more to current day stuff, it seems like currently you're in a stable in just about every major independent promotion out there. Is that something that just kind of happened, or is that like a plan for you in different promotions?
Not a plan on my end, but I have a speaking ability that I think promoters see, and I also have a certain amount of experience that can help other guys around me, and I have a certain amount of how do you say this, independent name value, so to speak. So you can put, we can look back at the inception of the Age of the Fall even, and that was the thought process behind that. If you put a guy like Tyler Black next to me, and I was sort of established at that time, so you gave him a platform next to me where eyes were going to be on him until he could, to start to develop, until he was going to break onto his own. And so certainly that continues in my career. And again, you had mentioned I'm not the top technical wrestler by any means, so certain guys also compliment me as well, and I can help make up for their deficiencies too. So basically what I'm saying is I'm not a whole wrestler, and so they need to put me with other guys, so a bunch of us make one whole proper performer.
But as far as the in-ring goes, it seems like almost like you've been rejuvenated this year, because you've been on a tear most year, having some of the best in-ring matches you've had in many, many years.
Thank you, man. I always work hard in the ring. Certainly any time I've fallen short, it's not because of a lack of effort. I'm not as inherently gifted as a lot of people in the ring. I'm not a great athlete. I've learned to perform well, and I do work very hard out there, and I've been fortunate to work with a lot of top performers today and yesterday and in the future and all that stuff. I've been very fortunate to have an opportunity to work with these guys, and I do enjoy going out there and performing and working hard. So I'm not saying this to be self-deprecating at all. I just understand where my abilities lie. I understand how good I am, and I understand how good I'm not. So I'm not as athletically gifted in ring, as gifted as a guy like AJ Styles, or a lot of the Ring of Honor talent at all. But I make up for it in other places, and certainly in the ring I can hold my own. It's not that I'm saying I can't. I'm just saying a one-off match with Jimmy Jacobs and somebody generally isn't going to be a dream match.
You're one of them guys that I think's like a perfect example that it's really, really a shame that in the current age that there's really only one like big promotion for everybody to go to, and that they only have their one way of doing things. Because just because you're not 6'5" and 300 pounds, like the things that you're good at, talking on the mic and the charisma, like that could be so put to good use. And it's just like, it's a shame there's not a place for you out there to be making good money that you really deserve,
Yeah, thank you. My size, let's be completely honest, my size has never, certainly doesn't help that I'm, 5'7", 165 pounds. But I'm not an athlete per se, and I was never an athlete in high school. My fault throughout my entire career has been and I'll say it straight up, has been my lack of dedication to dieting and going to the gym like they want. They want guys and rightfully so that are more athletic looking than me. If I had been dieting hard and working out hard since for the past 10 years or so, I'd have had a run in WWE or certainly TNA, one or the other, and that's on me. But I'm not trying to qualify this or making excuses, but I don't want to particularly live a life where I'm waking up at 6 a.m. and doing empty stomach cardio, and then going and eating egg whites and chicken breast, and that's all well and good. I didn't really get into wrestling to do that, and I know that's a sacrifice. Maybe I would have to. Certainly, that would be a sacrifice I would have to make to work on that top level on WTV. But that wasn't I wanted to do. I see that in every sense of it. So all I'm saying is the reason I haven't been to WWE has nothing to do with WWE. It has everything to do with me. There's no excuse of they only want guys that are 6'5" and 300 pounds. Of course that helps, but if I wanted to be in WWE and acted accordingly, I'd be in WWE. There's no excuse for it. The only person I can look at is the person in the mirror to say, you're the reason that Jimmy Jacobs not in WWE. Nobody else.
It's a good attitude to have.
Oh, it's just the truth. Do you think WWE had their eyes set on Daniel Bryan as this is the guy we want, this is the guy we want to main event WrestleMania 30? Oh, hell no. Bryan created that. I'm a huge believer that we can do whatever we want in this world. You can manifest whatever life you want. And the reason I'm not in WWE is because of me. And they can say, hey, we don't want guys under 6'2" and 240 pounds, and that was their sort of credo a few years ago. Recently, they've heard that we don't want guys over 30. Of course, you don't want guys over 30 until you do. They might not be looking for a guy that's 5'7", 165 pounds. But if I punch them in the face with something that is great, it's not that they're not going to take it. They'll take it. Trust me, they will. They're smart. I have a lot of respect for a lot of components in WWE, and they're smart guys. And since Triple H has taken over the developmental In the past 2.5 years, a lot of tremendous strides have been made to look out for the future of that company. I have all the respect in the world for Triple H. I've got a lot of friends down at NXT that speak very, very highly of him. So if I had something to offer them in that was congruent with the highest level of performance, I have no doubt they would take it.
I hope they come calling someday, because you obviously do have talents that there's like so many guys there that lack charisma, can't cut a promo, that someone like you could come on in and be put with them and totally get the act over as a main event act and make the difference, you know?
And that was certainly, a couple of years ago, they were looking at me to do something like that for them. I got a call in 2011. All of a sudden, they're looking for male managers. This is back in 2011, and there was one day that I thought that WWE was going to sign me. There was one day where I was like, oh my God, they called me up on a Friday to come to Raw on Monday, and at the end of Raw Monday, it was the word I got was, I don't want to jinx anything, but knock on wood, it's looking good. And then, nothing back, of course. It was sort of a crazy experience. And then, about a year later, I was part of the first invitation-only tryout that they had, when Triple H took over. That was when, Sami Zayn got signed and Sarah Del Rey and a few other people. And I was a part of that. I was part of, one of the first guys they called. And they weren't looking at me particularly to be an in-ring performer, but a mouthpiece, something in that vein. And I got positive feedback from them, and I stay in contact once in a while with people there. And if something comes up, it comes up. I do believe at some point in my life I will be employed by the WWE. I do believe that.
I believe that too. Speaking of developmental, and you went through the system, not the system, but the tryout to get there, and you recently have been working with one particular female who's going down there. What do you think of their tryout system that they have to pick independent guys?
Well, it's changed since I was there. I was there, like I said, as part of the first one. They told me I was one of the first guys they called, which I took as a very, very flattering comments. It was highly recommended. I do have a lot of great friends there that would look out for me if I ever, asked, if I ever called in a favor. I'm sure I could get one. But so it was. When I went down, there was a handful of guys who were experienced independent wrestlers, and then about 15 guys that were amateur wrestlers that had no professional experience. So really what they did was try to sort of gauge your athletic ability, gauge your, see if you're coachable, and then gauge, one day we did, one promo. Since then they've added a ton of cardio. Like the day one is sort of like drills, and then day two they'll do just a shit ton of cardio, and then day three you'll do promos. I think there's a little better way to gauge some things. I do. We didn't even have matches at all. Since then they have added matches to the guys they want to see wrestle. So they've, I went down there for a tryout and they didn't see me wrestle at all. But I'm not saying that as a cop-out or anything. Don't get me wrong. If they wanted to hire me, they'd hire me. If I had offered something worth hiring at that point, they would have hired me. But I got positive feedback, and I can't really go into detail of exactly what they told me, but it was all good, and we left on very positive terms. I think the WWE knows what they're doing, and for a lot of parts. Could it be better? Yeah, it absolutely could be better. Did they pass on guys that I might have hired? Yes. But I've got my finger pretty well on the pulse of what they're looking for down there now, and what they're hiring. And they've got a pretty nice system intact. Like I said, I have a lot of respect for Triple H, for looking out for this generation, this next generation of wrestlers, and what he's done. And I have a lot of respect for him as a performer too, man. I saw him on Raw this week, and just people have, in a weird way, I think Triple H is underrated as a performer. His promos, his acting, it's so, I think it's so spot on. His internal struggle with trying to, or his external struggle with trying to keep the authority together, and his internal struggle of whether to, take out Randy Orton at the end of Raw. I just thought it was great. I think he's a really, really like I said, almost like underrated performer in a weird way. I forgot even what the question was, but apparently I'm ranting about how good Triple H is.
No, I totally agree on the Triple H thing. I just think it's one of those things because he was kind of, well, I think a lot of people felt like over pushed for so long.
Sure.
And that it kind of became like a negative against him. But as far as his performances have always been top notch, so it's like I don't think anyone could deny he deserved the spot he got.
Yeah. I mean, now I feel like he's like better than ever. He's been a part of some of my favorite segments in the past year and a half, 2 years of Raw. I mean, he never like overacts. It's always, all his performances are always grounded in believability, which is something I really try to impress upon the younger performers. I hear myself saying this so much. I'm like, guys, take the makeup off. Take the makeup off. You're being a clown. Quit being a clown. Take the makeup off and have it come from a believable place, an honest place. Guys tend to overact, overperform, go into their promo voice. All of a sudden, now that we're talking in a wrestling promo voice, it's like, turn it off, man. Just say it, feel it, and say it. And Triple H is amazing at that.
And one more thing I wanted to ask you before we turn it over to Matt. You've been in Chikara this year, which is not like the first place I would think of you, because when I think of Jimmy Jacobs, I don't think of PG-rated comic book type wrestling. But how have you enjoyed your stay there?
I think very highly of Mike Quackenbush, and I have for some time. Mike and we've been in constant contact for a very long time. And creatively, I think he's a visionary. He's really expanded upon the canvas in which we're allowed to sort of paint on in professional wrestling. For some reason in this business, we've limited ourselves with a lot of rules, and Mike's gone outside that box and really showed you can make whatever rules you want in the universe that you create. So I was ecstatic to be a part of it. It's actually something that for a long time that Mike and I have been sort of trying to make happen and make our schedules work in the right place, the right time, the right opportunity, and this was it. So I'm ecstatic to be there, and I enjoy working with all the younger guys there and contributing what I can to their product and to the locker room.
And it's worked out really well too, man. You fit right in, another stable to flood, and you got to do a fun little angle with Eddie Kingston. I'm sure that's fun working with the King.
Yeah, King is amazing, man. I've known King, for however long. It's probably 2003, and he's an underrated performer. I think he's an amazing talker. So it's also flattering to be put in that situation where they bring me in as a top act, top performer, top, the number one or number two heel in the company, and then count on me to then help them do business and do business for them. It's a flattering gesture.
Yeah, you mentioned Eddie Kingston. He's another one that in another time, another period, like in the territory days, he'd be like one of the main eventers in so many different territories.
King's Day will come, man. I have no doubt about it. There's a handful of guys like me that have been around probably a little too long in the independents, and I have no doubt that our day will come. And you know what? The truth is, even if it doesn't, professional wrestling has afforded me such an amazing life in so many ways that even if I never have that real big run and make that real big money, it's still been such a blessing in my life. So I don't sweat it even at the least. I really don't.
It's good to hear. It sounds like you're in a good place in your life now.
I am. Yeah.
Hey, Matt, you still with us, buddy?
I am still with you guys. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I'm actually going to take it over with this question. You've had the chance to work with some of the young boys in Ring of Honor as of late, the Tadarius Thomases, the Adam Pages. Talk a little bit about some of the guys you see that have a future in Ring of Honor, whether it be in the company or out of the company.
Adam Page, you mentioned him. To see his growth in the past year, it's truly exhilarating. I watched him, I did an interview with Brian Alvarez a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned this on his interview, but I'll retell the story. I watched him at Final Battle last year work with Matt Hardy, and he was just a body. He was a vessel. He had no emotion. He wasn't real. Nothing emoted to the people. he was just a body, and it was so frustrating to watch. And I was almost like mad about it. It's like, what is this kid doing? Like, it's not just go out there and wrestle. It's emotional connection with the people, and it's bringing your inner heart, your heart out, and giving it to the people, and doing that through emotion. So much of what we do is hinged on emotion, creating an emotional connection with the people. And I watched, and I got like almost mad, and I wanted to slap him in his face. I wanted to slap him in his face until he got mad. He got mad, and so I could see something real come out of him, so I could be like, yes, good, that's real, that's what we want. So when we started doing this decade gimmick, it was sort of my idea to have him, I asked if there was any plans for him, and they didn't have anything concrete, and I said, let him be the guy in the locker room that just is scared to step on anybody's toes, always just going to be like, oh, yes, sirs, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, over and over and over again, who we can just abuse and take advantage of. And I just want to slap in his face until something real comes out of him. And we're seeing it now. We've really seen him turn a corner. And Adam Page has a really bright future ahead of him. And, dude, there's so many guys at Ring of Honor. You talk about the younger guys. There's so many guys that are super, like ACH is super talented. He's one of the I think one of the finest performers on the planet right now, and he's going to break through to the other side any day now. The match he had with Jay Lethal recently in Philadelphia for Ring of Honor TV was just amazing, and there's a lot of guys there. Tommaso Ciampa. I mean, there's really so many guys there, just really incredible performers.
Oh, absolutely, man. Tom brought up the fact that you're in a lot of heel stables. I feel like the whole you and BJ Whitmer thing has been played out so much. Do you feel like that's the case?
It's been played out, you said?
Yeah, I feel like it's been played out too much. I feel like you guys have been together anywhere and everywhere, and I feel like I kind of want to...
There's history there, and anytime there's history, I think that's always an easy road to go to. Has been played out? Yeah, possibly, man. I don't book it. I don't know. I love BJ, and I'll always be happy to.
Oh, absolutely. I have no disagreements with you there, man. And another big match coming up for you at AAW Windy City Classic. You'll be taking on Alex Shelley. I know that's a big match for you, as we were talking about earlier on in the show. Talk a little bit about that.
I'm looking forward to, wrestling him again. We had a match this year at XICW here outside of Detroit, and that was the first singles match we had in 9 years. Over 9 years, almost a decade. And considering, in 2003, we worked with each other, almost every single weekend, it was nice to go back to it. And he's an amazing performer. And you think about him and how many people he's influenced. He was such a tremendous performer on television. I felt him and Chris Sabin were such an underutilized asset at TNA, and I don't just mean their in-ring work. I mean, they hit a demographic that really nobody else in that company I felt was hitting. These, teenage girls and the video game playing guys, and they were sort of a cool young tag team, sort of like the Hardy Boys. And I felt they were really underutilized in that regard. And Alex has influenced so many younger wrestlers today. It blows my mind. And that's how you sort of know, you can gauge how really good somebody is and see what influence they've had. How guys like, I love him, but, Johnny Gargano, has modeled so much of himself after Alex Shelley, or, Shane Hollister, or, TJ Perkins. I think he's added a lot of influence, or Sami Callihan, a lot of influence over a lot of really great talents.
Absolutely. Tom brought it up earlier that you're one of the guys that no matter how many people are in the crowd, no matter where it is, you go all out all the time. And I feel like that's the case, that's not the case with a lot of the performers nowadays. Do you feel like that's the case at all?
I see that attitude sometimes. I do. Generally speaking, I'm fortunate to work with a lot of professionals, a lot of guys that are really professionals. When I see that sort of laziness, it disheartens me. Or maybe it's smart. I don't know. But the way I feel, if one person paid a ticket to see this, they're getting Jimmy Jacobs, and it's all in. It has to be. Is that working? Is that not working smart? Perhaps. But to me, that's the contract I made with those people, with the audience, is that if they paid to see me, even if it's one person, they paid to see all of me. And that doesn't mean being stupid, I don't think, but it means that I will never sacrifice the quality of the match due to trying to take it easy or being lazy.
I brought up BJ Whitmer earlier, and I had to bring this up as well. I've watched it many of times, but I watched the infamous powerbomb slip earlier. What are the injuries that you got out of that? Because I would have had to assume that they had to have been crucial.
When we slipped off the top rope during that powerbomb in Detroit in 2006, no, I was fine. I was perfectly fine. I was fine, it was supposed to be a powerbomb into a Hurricane Rana, and we had done that spot probably half a dozen times before that, and I didn't even know we were falling. If you watch the video, you watch it in slow motion, you can see I'm still bending backwards trying to give him a Hurricane Rana. And thank God he had the presence of mind to throw me forward, and so my head hit the middle rope, or the top rope, middle rope, bottom rope, and apron. Because had he not, I would have been bending backwards. I would have landed directly on my head. But I was fine. We were up there. We fell. We were down. I'm like, and we were down on the ground. I'm like, oh shit, what happened? I guess we fell.
That's absolutely insane.
I was fine. BJ broke his ankle, so he was not so fine. But yeah, I was fine. Yeah, extremely dangerous. I mean, very scary if you watch. I mean, really. Yeah, it was definitely the first time I saw it on video. I had no idea how bad it was until I saw it on video, and then I was like, "Oh my god, I almost died."
Yeah, it definitely looked that way. You made your return to Alpha One Wrestling earlier on this year. Talk a little bit about being at Alpha One Wrestling, because I know you have quite a history there.
I've worked for them on and off for years, and that's there's a lot of good guys in Toronto that's have that sort of hunger, but it's a lot of it's about getting outside of Toronto and outside of the area too, and that's where, like I talked about, Ethan Page and Josh Alexander. That's really where they're from, and Toronto's always been a great wrestling city, though. I mean, it always has. It really has been. It's one of my favorite cities to work in. So the crowds they have, they're always good, and they have a lot of good talent there, and yeah, I think it's great.
And you just became the AIW Tag Team Champions recently with BJ Whitmer, somebody we've already talked about. Talk a little about the Forgotten and the thing they got going on at AIW. It's me, BJ, and Crimson, Tommy Mercer, and just doing a gimmick basically where all these new guys are coming up, and we've been sort of left behind and hence forgotten, and that people are fickle and they only want to see what's the newest, shiniest toy. And while we've been here the entire time, or we've been busting our asses the entire time, it's similar to the deal we've got going on with the Decade in Ring of Honor, and it's great, man. It was the first time I really worked with Tommy Mercer, and I think really highly of him, and I think TNA dropped the ball with him, and especially under the right guidance, he and I don't mean guidance as far as telling him what to do. I mean fostering an environment where he can bring out his own internal creativity and perform. I think he could have done really, really well there. But it's TNA's sort of history of not knowing how to handle their talent. Have you ever had any history with TNA, done any work with them, and if so, talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I did one explosion match back in Nashville in January of 2004 with Shark Boy, and then they called me up in 2006. I believe it was the fall, it was like August maybe, and they brought me in to Orlando to try me out. I was on the pre-show going to the pay-per-view. They had the 30 minutes beforehand,
yep,
and hyping the pay-per-view, and it was me and some some guy, El Diablo, maybe from Puerto Rico, working with Sanjay and Cassidy Riley, and that was it. And it's always been fine experiences. They were always nice to me. Terry Taylor was the guy I always talked to, and he was always very amenable, really cool to me. One of the first people in wrestling to call me back. And so it was an exciting experience in 2006, really when I was on my way up, working for them. It was fun. It was fine. I wish them all the best. I wish them all the success in the world, man. I really do. I really hope, they get their TV deal together, and I really hope the TV, I hope it gets better. That's all. I really want to see the product succeed, and they have so many tools. But some days it seems like they don't know how to use those tools.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when it comes to TNA, do you feel like too many fans are kind of like armchair bookers when it comes to TNA and other promotions?
As far as I'm concerned, the fans can armchair book all they want. That's their prerogative as fans. They can say what they want. And it's stupid as a performer to you have to take it for what it is. You don't want to blow it off. If you have a ton of fans saying something is shit, well, maybe it's shit. At the same time, you don't want to let it dictate everything to you. You want to listen to them and have a healthy understanding of what they're talking about and how that reflects. You want to learn how to gauge that through whatever tools you have to gauge that, whether that's what people are saying on Twitter or message boards or the numbers, the ratings, or your pay-per-view buys, your merchandise, your house shows, whatever the case may be. The fans are telling you something, and to ignore that would be asinine. At the same time, you don't let every single comment, you don't live or die by it.
Yeah, absolutely fair enough. And as a part of House of Glory Wrestling in December, you'll be making your Squared Circle Live debut, if I'm not mistaken there. Talk a little bit about working with House of Glory if you have in the past, and talk a little about making your Squared Circle Live debut.
I don't know what House of Glory. I don't know what
Amazing Red School?
Yeah, I'm not booked on that, am I?
Yeah, you are.
On what day?
You are.
What day is that?
I believe it's the 21st of December.
That's the Squared Circle show,
yeah,
right?
It's House of Glory versus Squared Circle, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know the gimmick on the show. Yeah, I know. As far as I'm concerned, I was booked for Squared Circle. Which I don't know a whole ton about them. I mean, they have a long, long history in Toronto wrestling, though, and I have friends that work there. I don't know if I'll be there full time or not, but I think it's a possibility. I see a lot of the roster. They do have a really good roster there, so we'll see. I would be looking to see if, like I said, I love working in Toronto, so I would be interested in coming back there. We'll see how it goes December 21st.
Yeah, looking forward to it, man. What's in the future for Jimmy Jacobs? What are you looking to do short-term, long-term? I mean, you talked about, knowing your place kind of deal in professional wrestling nowadays. Talk a little bit about what's in the future.
What I feel is in my future is something in creative. I've been really stepping up in a lot of the locker rooms I've been in recently and trying to help out the younger guys. This year has been really creatively a year of creative growth for me, a lot. And part of that has to do with I sort of sat back for a long time because I didn't want to be an older guy that just rambles and gives advice that nobody wants to hear. And this year I decided to give my knowledge value and to share that with people. And it's being received for the most part very warmly and appreciatively. And I've stepped up in the Ring of Honor locker room and the other locker rooms that I'm in, every month, and trying to help their talents grow and help their talent get, so often in wrestling, guys stick to what they should do, and I'm trying to get them to sort of throw that mentality out the window of should and follow their feelings more, because your feelings are real, and wrestling's fake. Wrestling's fake, but the feelings in it are real. What we make people feel are real. Your feelings as a performer are real. So if you can bring your feelings out, if you can manifest those, that generally is a very, very surefire way to connect with an audience, and stop playing by these sort of strict rules in wrestling, and make it more of an art. Because that's when guys really start to break through.
Absolutely, man. I feel like it'd be such a shame.
Is when they stop. I don't want to say stop caring, but they get to that point where it's like, F it. Either I'm going to live by my sword. What's that?
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's such a shame if somebody doesn't put your mind to creative use, man. That's such a mind for the business.
Thank you. Yeah, and oddly, I have been met with I say this with no ego at all, but with some resistance in different places, where for whatever reason guys want to keep things, sort of their way in some sort of strict value, and that's fine. People are allowed to do whatever they want to do. I really try to impose. I try to impose nothing, only add. So I don't. If somebody doesn't want my help or advice, I will never take that with offense. But I've been trying to help foster the creativity and inward emotion, and to externalize that in a lot of new younger talents that hasn't captured that yet.
And you talked a little bit about working at the House of Truth Wrestling School. Talk a little about some of the standouts from there. Like Tom said earlier, so one of the standouts just got signed to the WWE as well.
Right, yeah, Sarah Schreiber. She reported down to NXT last week, and she's there, and I talk to her every day, even from 1,000 some miles away. I'm still trying to hold her hand through it, and help the kids out. And it's with her. It's a lot of huge opportunity very early on, and the stakes are high. So I really try to help her out as much as I can, because I see a really, really big future for her. And clearly WWE sees something in her too. So we're gonna see. I think she can take this as far as she chooses to. She can be a big, big star for them. And seeing the other kids too, I help them get booked on shows. I travel with them, and Owen Travers is a kid that recently had a Ring of Honor match in Kalamazoo, Michigan last month, and he's a kid that I've really taken a liking to. He helps out at the House of Truth too. And just seeing the kids come out, and we just, like I said, we finished class 2 weeks ago, and they're all great kids, and I hope the best for them. I try to help them out as much as I can. That's part of it. It's not like you come into this school for 12 weeks and we kick your ass out the door and that's it. It's I've had students live with me for Christ's sake, trying to help them out. So it's a fun process. It's been rewarding for me. It has been.
Absolutely. One more final question before I hand it back over to Tom for anything he's got left. I loved your run in Scum. I felt like that could have run a little bit longer. I felt like the group could have took a little bit of a different direction. How do you feel about that?
That wasn't certainly creatively the best point in my career, or something that stands out to me. That I was just sort of along for the ride. That wasn't my baby. So I was just really there as a performer. So it's not like I disliked what we were doing, especially like I liked when it was me and Kevin and Steve. And not that
I thought that was the best work.
Okay, and not that I dislike when the rest of them came in, because it was a natural progression in what we were doing. But when it was me, Kevin, and Steve, those are two of my very close friends, and it was rewarding having that success in Ring of Honor together. When not too long before that, the three of us sort of seemed like the black sheep of the family there when Sinclair bought the company. So that sort of success,
I noticed that as well.
Yeah, that sort of success was very rewarding, but creatively that was not my baby. So it doesn't have, other than doing it with my friends, it wasn't the most. I don't have the most emotional connection to that story.
Fair enough. With that said, Tom, if there's anything you want to throw back out there, buddy, feel free.
Yeah, you just recently finished a short little tour in Manitoba, Canada. How was that?
It's fun. I work up there for a company called Canadian Wrestling Elite. We'll be back up there. It's like January, I want to say 13th through the 15th, so 6 days. And I'm a wrestler, man. I love wrestling. And if I could do it every single day of my life and never be home, I would do that. I would, if I could wrestle, just here, drive a few hours, wrestle, drive a few hours, wrestle. And if I could do that every single day and do it with my friends, I would do it for the rest of my life. I love it.
I brought that up because while you were on that tour, you won a 50-man Royal Rumble.
I did, yes. I won a 50-man Royal Rumble. I went in at number 24, I believe,
wow.
And lasted to the very end, which earns me a title shot, I believe, the next tour. And that was after wrestling earlier in the night as well. So I had a long night that night, and I got dropped on my head somewhere in there with 50 guys, man. It was a zoo, but yeah, I survived it. I'm the king of the battle royals, the 50-man battle royals at least. Anything under that, not so much.
That's a goddamn lot of pay envelopes going around that evening. So I wanted to ask you about, which I'm sure you've probably talked about this a million times, but I've never heard you tell the story, is back in the day when you were IWA Mid-South champion, how you ended up in an AAW ring on the Indies, dropping their title in the garbage, and not only not getting fired, but continuing to work for IWA Mid-South after that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a glamorous thing by any means. That's not something I'm proud of. The story is this. IWA Mid-South was supposed to have some shows that upcoming weekend, and they canceled them, which was not uncommon. But at the time, I was making a living as a wrestler, but not a very meager living. And I needed the money from those shows, like the end of the month. It was the end of November of that year of 2005, and I needed that money. I was counting that money to pay my rents. And I forget the exact reason why they canceled the shows. I think, Ian Rotten was just having another kid, and there might have been complications. And I'm not taking away from the legitimacy of why they canceled it or not, but I'm counting on this money to pay my rent. And he's like, how much do you need? And I told him how much I needed. And it wasn't even the full amount of like the 3 or 4 shows he'd canceled. But I was like, this is what I need to cover my rent. And he said, okay, I'll call you like tomorrow or the next day, and I'll PayPal you the money. But I had a plan B. I called up Danny Daniels, and I said, I'm willing to, begrudgingly, but I will. If Ian doesn't come through on this money, I'll come there and throw his belt in the trash for it. We had joked about it like months before or something. We had canceled a show, or a month before. I think he had canceled a show, and was that right? I don't know. But we had joked about it before, and then we did cancel a show. I jokingly texted him, I think I'm ready to throw the belt in the trash, and then the joke became serious, and I said, look, if Ian doesn't come through this money, which he says he's going to send me, I will, we can talk about it. And I showed up to the show, and I did not want to do it. It's not something I reveled in. I wasn't happy about doing it, but this was the deal. They would pay me the money I needed if I threw the belt in the trash. And if Ian had called me a second before I went out of the curtain and said, hey, I just PayPal'd you the money, I wouldn't have done it. But I did it, and I wasn't proud of it. And he called me afterwards. And he was very he was heartbroken. He was very sad. He never yelled at me, but he was very sad. And I felt very bad for doing it. And I continued to work for him. I mean, it wasn't a personal thing. It was just about getting my rent paid that month. And could I have found another way to pay my rent? It's possible. But I was young and dumb, and that's what I did.
And boy, is AAW, it's like night and day from then to now. How far they've come over the years.
Yeah, man. AEW's really, it's really grown, and it's got good production. It's a good show. It's a good show to go to. A lot of talent comes through there, and they bring in a lot of the more established independent wrestlers, and they grow, some of their own. And that's a place where Seth Rollins really made a name for himself and started to break out. And I love going there every month.
And my last question for you. I know you've had the name from day one. Jimmy Jacobs, man. How did that come about to become your name? And you're 15 years later, still Jimmy Jacobs.
I started off as a referee, and I just thought it sounded like a bad referee name. That's it. It was like, referee, Jimmy Jacobs. Like, that sounds like a goofball, dumb referee. There. And now here I am 15 years later.
Jimmy Jacobs. There you go.
Yep.
This weekend, man, Ring of Honor Survival of the Fittest weekend, Columbus, Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, and the Decade is going to be part of it in tag team action all weekend. Why don't you tell the people what other upcoming dates you had? You mentioned some earlier in the show before we let you go.
Yeah, if you go to jimmyjacobs.net, I try to keep all my upcoming dates on there, although I'm terrible at emailing my webmaster all my dates. I'm in Westland, Michigan tomorrow, then it's Columbus Friday, Toledo Saturday, Warren, Michigan Sunday. Then, like I said, Monday we start the new class at the House of Truth, HOTWrestlingSchool.com. I recommend, you go there and check out the school, and I've been tweeting about a lot of what's going on. We have different people in there all the time. Zach Gowan's in there, Rhino's in there sometimes. I have a friend that is a longtime employee for WWE, and she's a production supervisor on Total Divas now. Jackie Palumbo, she was in there a few weeks ago, talking to the kids about production and TV and all the other ends of the aspects of wrestling. So we really have a lot of stuff happening there. We talked about Zara, who just got signed to WWE, and we got new kids we're sending out into the world. And then on Thursday, next Thursday, go back to IWA Mid-South in Clarksville, Indiana. Then what's next weekend? What's the dates? Oh, then I think Chikara, the 15th and 16th. And then after that, it's IWA Mid-South. They're running every Thursday now, so I'm down there. I'm going to be down there every Thursday until they stop running. I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm down there every Thursday. And then we're in Baltimore on the 22nd for Ring of Honor. I'm back at IWA, and then AIW in Cleveland, AAW in Chicago. I've got. It's every weekend, man. I'm working more than I ever have, and I'm having fun doing it. It's great. It's glamorous. Go to jimmyjacobs.net, and you can see all my upcoming dates. I think for the rest of the year, although I'm getting some new December shows. I'm working out some stuff coming up as well that'll be added to the list of the Jimmy Jacobs Tour 2014, which wraps up, I don't know, at the end of 2014. It just continues on and on and on forever and ever and ever.
God damn,
That's
man.
awesome, man.
I think you work more than the WWE guys at this point.
The WWE, it's like 4 days on, 3 days off, generally speaking. So it's pretty close. Just for way less money.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. With that said, man, hopefully the WWE gives you that ring because you definitely deserve it. And hopefully you continue all the success you've had lately and all the best, man. Once again, thank you so much for the time. Throw out the social media as well, man. Let these fans give you a follow as well.
Absolutely. It's Jimmy Jacobs X on Twitter. Jimmy Jacobs X, like Mega Man X. Jimmy Jacobs X on Twitter. And then Facebook is, I think, Jimmy Jacobs Experience. My Twitter is what I use the most, which still isn't a whole ton. But that's where you can see me banter with Zara Schreiber back and forth sometimes. That's the highlight of that, I think.
And you also have a Pro Wrestling Tees as well, I believe, right?
Yes, yeah, Pro Wrestling Tees. Jimmy Jacobs, Pro Wrestling Tees. Please buy my shit. I need money. I'm a poor, broke, independent wrestler. I'm actually not. I'm doing okay for myself, but I always appreciate the support. I do. So, buy a T-shirt, buy a DVD. All that information's on jimmyjacobs.net as well.
Awesome, man. I'll give it a follow. I'll give it a shout out, and definitely thank you again for the time. And Tom, thanks again for co-hosting, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. We appreciate it.
All right. Take care, gentlemen.